last question of the evening.
Oh, how unfortunate.
Oh, okay. Randy, in previous debates, we've heard Congressman Bishop offer a very specific, comprehensive plan for dealing with illegal immigration. I have to believe that's true since this is the first debate I've been to. You have consistently answered that you want to have a, quote, comprehensive, close quote, program leading to a solution. Do you have any specifics on how you would differ from the Congressman's approach?
Sure. Look, I think there are a lot of important elements to that plan. One thing is, first we have to contain the problem. That has two issues. One is we need to secure our borders. That's very important for national security. While illegal immigration is an issue, we also are concerned about what's coming across our borders. We also have to stop the forest wars because this problem will reappear. So even as we deal with the millions of illegal immigrants who are here today, the problem will simply pop up again. You know, we saw back in the 80s when we dealt with the problem, we gave amnesty to folks who were here, and then we're back in some ways the same place we were back then. So we have to secure our borders. The second thing we have to do is we shouldn't put in place visa programs, guest worker programs that help, you know, in this district for the agriculture industry. That's very important. For our farmers, for our hospitality industry, that's very important. So we need an efficient visa program. When we're looking at the technology field, get folks who come here and get graduate degrees. Again, it's very hard for them to get visas to work in the United States. And the path to citizenship is sometimes too difficult. We make it too hard for people to become citizens here. And certainly this is the land of immigrants. I am the grandchild of immigrants. But we also have to deal with the fact that so many people are here illegally. And while I have tremendous compassion, particularly those who are here at no fault of their own, we also can't penalize those who have played by the rules. And we also have to acknowledge that we have a system that's groaning under, you know, where we're going without, where we're in some sense bankrupt. We owe $16 trillion. And when you're talking about the schools or the hospitals, which you mentioned earlier on, the fact that you have illegal immigrants or undocumented workers using these services, and we are compassionate people, we're not going to turn them away, but that causes a real financial stress on us. So we need to take these people from out of the shadows, but we can't reward them for breaking the rules. We can't put them ahead of the line. We can't grant people amnesty because that wouldn't be fair for the folks who did follow the law.
Okay.
I say this without malice. This is, I think, the third of the fourth debates we've had in which we've been asked about our immigration policy. And what I'm still unclear on is what Mr. Altschuler proposes to do with the 12 to 15 million undocumented immigrants who are here now. Because that's really the crux of the issue. There are four pieces to comprehensive immigration reform, and the first three, virtually everyone agrees on. The first is to see to it that we maintain very, very hardened borders. That's the phrase. So that people cannot come into this country without proper documentation. And by the way, we're doing a very good job of it. We have dramatically reduced the number of people that come in, and we have spent tens of billions of dollars on fences and detention beds and on customs enforcement specialists and police officers, and we've put the National Guard on the border. We've done a lot of things. I've supported every one of them. 40% of the immigrants who are here now without proper documentation did in fact enter legally. So we need a better system of internal enforcement. So if someone comes here on a student visa, we have a system that says that they go back to their home country when that student visa expires, and so on, a work visa. We need a visa system that actually works. This is the third part. So the second part is what's called increased internal enforcement, both enforcing existing visa law and cracking down on employers who hire undocumented workers. Third thing we have to do is have a visa system that actually works. 60% of the agricultural workers on Long Island are undocumented. Now, does anyone think the farmers in this country enjoy breaking the law? Of course they don't. But they have to bring in their crops, and they need access to a workforce. So we need to have a visa system, it's called ag jobs, which I've supported, that would allow people to come here for temporary work visas, do their work, and go home. We need to fix that. And there are other kinds of, there's the high-level job visas, graduates of Stony Brook University that we employ, that we teach, and then we send them home. Crazy. The last part is the part that's so difficult, and that's what I'm respectfully asking my opponent to tell me what he would do. I'll tell you what I would do with the 12 to 15 million people who are here now. I would put in place a system called earned legalization, not amnesty, earned legalization, which says that you would give a work visa to people who are here now without proper documentation. They would pay a fine to recognize the fact that they entered the country illegally. They would pay back taxes on the amount of money that they earned while they were off the books to the extent that that can be calculated. They would learn English, they would learn civics, and they would maintain an otherwise clean record. That's a path to earn legalization. What I just laid out is what George Bush supports. It's what his brother Governor Bush supports. It's what John McCain supported, and then he backed away from it. This used to be an issue on which there was a bipartisan consensus because everyone recognized that if we dug in, we weren't going to get it solved. So I hope that we can return to that bipartisan consensus, but I also hope for the benefit of the people of this district that my opponent, and I say this, as I say, respectfully, will tell us what his plan is for what we do with the most difficult part of this problem, which is what do you do with the 12 to 15 million people who are here now?
Well, Congressman, you've been in office for 10 years, we haven't fixed this problem. And while you've been in office, and this is a grand plan that you're talking about right now, you voted for in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. You voted not to ban driver's license for illegal immigrants. So you haven't dealt with the problem here, you swept the problem under the carpet, and we haven't been serious about it. And yes, I agree with you, we need to deal with the 12 to 15 million, whatever the number of folks here who are undocumented. And I also agree it is not reasonable to say that we're going to take all those folks and return them home. But the very first thing I would do would actually deal with the problem and sit down, again, on a bipartisan basis and demand that we have a solution. And I agree, it should include fines and penalties. And I agree that at the very least people should go to the back lines, and these people are going to need to go back to the country. It depends on the situation. But we have to deal with the problem, and granting them benefits before we deal with the problem isn't the solution. It may be the politically expedient thing to do, but we simply can't afford that, and it's unfair. It's unfair for somebody here in Suffolk who has a landscaping business, who pays all their workers on the books, who follows the law. And then they have to compete with somebody who isn't doing that, somebody who's going down Horseblock Road and picking up an illegal immigrant. And then, the consumer sometimes chooses the cheaper provider, and that cheats out the person who's played by the rules, or the person who's waited for such a long time and spent so much money to become an American citizen. And while they go through that arduous process, other people are here. We know they're here illegally, and we're voting to give them benefits here that citizens would give. That isn't right. So yes, we need to deal with the problem, and we need to be humane about it and realistic about it. But you haven't dealt with the problem in the 10 years you've been in Congress, and I find it not credible that suddenly that's going to happen next year.
We're not 3 for 3. This is the third debate in which I've asked him to provide what he would do with the people who are here now, and he hasn't answered the question. Secondly, it is simply not correct that I voted to provide driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. Not true. It is also not true that I voted to provide in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants. Now, either there is an attempt to purposely mislead, or there is a lack of understanding of the legislation that he's citing. But I have done neither of the things that he just said I did. But here's the thing that I find the most amusing. I am a member of Congress, one of 435. He persistently holds me responsible that we haven't fixed the immigration problem in the 10 years I've been there. Well, let me ask you this. John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, is coming on October 10th to do a fundraiser for Mr. Altschuler. He's presided over the most dysfunctional, least productive Congress in our history. You're going to be in the same room with him. Ask him why comprehensive immigration reform hasn't come to the floor. He's the one that controls the floor schedule. Ask your friend Eric Cantor, the majority leader, why comprehensive immigration reform hasn't come to the floor. I know it's much, much more fun to blame me, much, much more fun to beat up on me. But those guys control the House of Representatives, and so long as they are in charge, I will guarantee you, you will never, ever see comprehensive immigration reform on the floor of the House of Representatives.
Gentlemen, we have come to the end of the question part of the debate. I can tell you're both very sad at hearing that. We will reverse the order of statements, and Mr. Bishop will give his closing statement first.
Thank you. And by the way, thank you all very much for being here tonight. And by the way, I think we're going to do 50 or 60 more of these if any of you want to, come. You've heard a lot about my alleged failings over the last 10 years. And as I said, I know it's fun to beat up on me, but let me tell you what I've done over the last 10 years. Okay? Here's what I've done, and I'm damn proud of it. I led the effort to save 1,000 jobs that were in peril at Brookhaven Lab, and we won. I led the effort.
They've only got 2 minutes.
I led the effort to save 1,200 jobs at the 106th Air Rescue Wing, which was slated to be closed, and we won. I wrote the language that brought over $100 million of aid to K-12 schools in this district, that saved thousands of teaching jobs and saved adding to the local tax burden. I brought back over $150 million worth of projects that mostly went to local government so that they could get something done without adding to the local tax burden. I have successfully closed 15,000 constituent service cases, and I'm very proud of that, and it's from veterans, you name it, we've done it, and we've done it really, really well. And I've also carved out a role for myself as a national leader on higher education policy, and I was at ground zero of legislation that made it easier for kids to afford college and made it less expensive to borrow. I'm proud of that. So I believe that I have done the job that you sent me to Washington to do. You sent me to represent this district, I've done it. And what we have before us is a choice. Who do you think is going to do the best job of representing you, and who do you think is going to be on your side? I believe that I've demonstrated that I'm the guy that you should answer yes to for both of those questions. I would be honored to have your vote, and I thank you for coming tonight.
I'd also like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and I'd like to thank Congressman Bishop for participating in the debate. You know, we have a very different perspective on a lot of things. First of all, what the role of a representative or congressman is. And yes, I do hold Congressman Bishop responsible because he is our congressman. And there are only 435 congressmen. And I think that each one of them needs to be held responsible. This isn't your child who you say good job and you tried your hardest. We need production from each and every one of them. And I'm old-fashioned about this, but you, if I am lucky enough to be elected, will be my customers. And I need to do your bidding, and I report to you. And if I fail, and if I don't produce, then I get fired. And I think that's the responsibility that I have as your representative. Now, yes, it's true. We've talked about a lot of issues. I don't want to raise taxes. I don't think the issue right now is that Suffolk County people can afford to pay more taxes today. We have runaway spending. And when Congressman Bishop talks about all of the money he brought back to the district and the jobs he saved, that's our money. And the bad news is that when we send that money to Washington or when we send it to Albany, a lot of that money gets lost along the way. And I'd rather keep that money right here in Suffolk County. I'd rather keep it in your pockets. Because I think you know what to do more with your money better than the government ever will do. Because the government isn't efficient. And I don't think the bigger government is the solution. I don't think another giant program like the Affordable Care Act is going to fix the problems that we have today. I think it's the private sector that creates jobs, not the government. We have $16 trillion in debt, 40,000 more unemployed people since Congressman Bishop came in office, and the unemployment rate has gone from 5 to 8%. Those are the facts. And he has been our representative during that. If we want to change Congress, we need to change our congressman. And we have an opportunity right here to do that in the 1st Congressional District with somebody who has succeeded in the private sector and will go in with one priority and one priority only, representing this district.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you both for taking part in tonight's debate. I'd like to thank our friends at Peconic Public Broadcasting. And I think Mr. Bishop was wrong. There's only like 25 or so more debates. I may have exaggerated. And I forgot to thank our comrades at the Southampton Press newspapers, the Press News Group for co-sponsoring with us tonight. Now, they will be having their own debate on October 15th at 7 o'clock at the Bridgehampton School. And there is another debate with the League of Women Voters on October 25th at 7 p.m. at the West Hampton Women's High School. Thank you all for coming, and good night.